It was a fundraiser, and whoever was the coach would kick them off. And it was a great idea till about middle of the night, and you've been having a few beers all the way, and it's your turn to run. You're like, I don't want to do this. Got a quarter mile in me. Got a quarter mile in me. I'm ready to
Can I run for a block?
But people used to, we built the new Fiji house, and they'd say, well, were you ever in the old one? I said, I kind of remember sleeping there after this event, but it was always dark and
when
late.
You say the old one, you're talking about at IU or at Purdue?
Yeah, at IU.
Yeah, thank you for building that house, by the way.
It's a castle.
It's awesome. And I remember when they did the ribbon cutting and went in.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy crap. If I could sign up for 4 more years, I'd do it right now
in
on the spot.
Just because of the house?
Well, perhaps.
Perhaps. Good location, everything else.
Well designed.
Were you all at the dedication?
I was not,
Yeah.
no.
So I don't know if you remember this part, but one of the, Pat Lindley or one of them that ran the campaign, said, I'd like to thank the CEO of Shiel Sexton. Did a great job building this thing. And he was also a Fiji. He was a Fiji at Purdue. The whole room hissed me. It was just like, I thought.
You felt the love.
Poetic. I loved it. It's one of my favorite. I tell all my friends that story. I love it.
That's
But I
wild.
have a lot of really close buddies that were
Well, you know,
down
when you walk into the house, as soon as you walk in the front door on the left, there's a plaque with all of the pledge classes that donated money
Right.
to help fund the construction of the new house.
Right.
And I'm a class of 2000.
Right.
And it goes 96, 97, 98, 99, 2001, 2002. And we're like, what? I never got a single call.
Oh, that is really funny.
And what they did was they went out to all of the pledge class presidents to help be the ringleader for their pledge class. And our pledge class president's a good friend of mine, lives up in Chicago, so we give him shit all the time about, hey bud, like now you got to put in some dollars to get we want a separate plaque with like an arrow pointing over that says class of 2000.
You're going to have to pony up big.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's something to fix. You know, when you put 18 to 22-year-olds or 21 now in a place and you put 70 or 80 of them in there, things happen. So we build it somewhere between tradition and a jail is what you have to do. Everything has to last a long time. And so, yeah, it was quite a project, though. Beautiful.
Sure.
The masonry on it was spectacular, or is spectacular. And it'll be there. It's a 100-year building. So
Yeah, well, you guys did a great job.
It'd
Thank
be
you for
great.
doing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
You mentioned something about assembly and doing some work down there
Right.
when Fred was the AD. 2 questions. 1, what was your general impression of having gone through that building?
Right.
And 2, did it even consider, maybe put a few trick things in here that might help out the boilers?
I did mention to Fred once in passing that no one knows where Jimmy Hoffa's body is. So if there's a Purdue flag somewhere, no. He was very clear to me. It was one of these with the wagging finger that there better be no Purdue crap, no black and gold in this building. I said, I got a trailer full of black and gold engineers out here, but we'll be very respectful to you and Tom Morrison and everybody at IU that's giving us the work.
I'm pretty sure they installed bigger rims, but only for the visiting, like when Purdue is playing.
we keep moving. Well, and heavy ones for big 7'4" guys to hang on.
Right.
No longer the cradle of quarterbacks, now just the cradle of 7 foot, 350-pound guys.
Should make them tight ends. We might improve our football program. But no, those were great, iconic projects. And then we got to finish Memorial Stadium and do the wraparound on that. But anyway, it was good. It was just great relationships with IU, Purdue, Notre Dame, and then all the other state schools and higher private ed. And they're just, if I could retire and only do higher ed, I would do it. It's just stimulating, and the diversity of projects is so beautiful, and everything you do on a campus improves the life of the campus for not only the visitor but the student and the faculty and the employees and all that. So there's a lot of energy around campus that really gets you fired up. But we've had some great projects down at IU, and we're doing one at IU Indianapolis, just kicking off the new science building.
Oh, yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, really
Where's that
excited
at?
about
There's
that.
a lot of construction going on that campus right now.
Is that campus hilarious? Drive down Michigan Street and head west, and I tell people I've never been to Northern Ireland. It feels like the Protestants on one side and the Catholics on the other. On one side it's black and gold flags, and the other side it's red and white flags.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be one of the best things for our city and I've seen in certainly my almost 40 years here. I think having the best of Indiana and the research and what they're going to bring, and the best of Purdue on their side, a little more smaller on their approach, but I just think it's going to be fantastic for the city and the employees.
Yeah.
And think about the exposure you can get going to school and being in a biology major or something at IU and working down the street at Lilly. I just think it's going to be, the next 10 years are going to be fantastic for downtown, and that's going to be
so.
One
Even
of the
though on paper they've separated, there's still probably a lot of intertwining, I would assume.
There's a bit. They're doing a pretty good job. It's always was IU ran that campus, and Purdue just housed a few majors. But and I don't want to speak on the academic terms for anybody. I'm just this is coming at it from a cement mixer standpoint, but from a build and design. But there'll be some shared certainly, but they're pretty much parceling it off, and you do your thing, and I do our thing. And IUPI was a great institution. I mean, two of my daughters finished there in their respective majors, but it was always a little bit of milk toast in the sense that you weren't sure exactly. Now, IU obviously has an identity. Purdue obviously has an identity, and Ball State and others. And IUPI had this mix a little bit. But I love it. We have interns that could walk to our office that are going to be going to school there. So I think it's going to be a great thing for the city. I'm really excited about it.
I think sort of the separation of powers allows each institution, which, while both excellent, do have different focuses on what they're really excellent at. It allows them to really go their own path.
Without a doubt. You're unbridled. You don't have to sit there and say, go to committee and figure out what this is. We are IU, and IU Indianapolis establishing their identity. This is Purdue, and Purdue having their identity. And I think I really do. I think it's cleaner, exactly your point, Joe, and I think that it's going to be a great long-term. It's going to be clunky for a little bit. And, they had their little turf wars for a little bit, but they'll get through it, and it'll be a great thing for the state and city.
Now you can see what little brother does to look at big brother.
There you go.
On that note,
I won't say which one's which, though.
Yeah.
We all know.
We all know. We all know.
All right, let's roll. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Industrious Podcast. Thank you all for joining us from wherever you get your podcast, or if you're joining us on the Assessor YouTube channel, thank you for doing so. While you're on there, don't forget, hit the little like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so, and hit that little notification bell icon. Won't cost you a dime. You don't have to build any new buildings to do it. It's completely free, and we would greatly appreciate that. All right, special episode, especially for those folks from in the state of Indiana. We've got a lot of ties here, which we'll get into. Mr. Mike Dilts, Chairman and CEO of Shiel Sexton. Mike, welcome to the Industrious Podcast.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you both for having me today.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
We'd like to start things off with letting our guest provide a little intro on themselves. So
Sure.
Have at it.
You ready?
Yeah.
And you can hit the mute button when I talk about Purdue, but
we're going to edit all of that out.
That's all. It's already gone.
We don't want to destroy our viewership.
It'll be brief because it is brief. But born and raised in Lafayette, Indiana, right across the river from Purdue University. Grew up in a very blue-collar neighborhood, wonderful neighborhood, great parents, fifth of six. First one to actually attend college. And there's a path to that I may want to share with you a little bit later. But went to Purdue, finally found the major that I really enjoyed, and that was the construction major. It was very boutique at the time. Graduated in that, went to work for a national company, St. Louis for a year, and then Boston for almost 5. And then we migrated back here after having some children, and it's been a fantastic ride here in Indianapolis since.
Well, you just mentioned that you wanted to touch back on it, your comment of being the first to graduate college in your family. What is that? Let's go right into that.
Well, and I think that, and I don't look at it as a badge of honor in any sense. We had maybe it was just the time of life that I grew up in this area. I grew up next to carpenters and plumbers and factory workers, as my dad was for 40 years at Alcoa. My mother and father, because of their circumstance, didn't have the chance to go to school. But the best part about that neighborhood was, one, it was very close. It was, it was like we walked to the grocery, we walked to school, you walked to church, and it was a gang. And it was certainly the baby boom, because there had to be 19 kids on my block. And although I only was a swimmer, because when you're 5'9" and you don't jump high or run fast, as my dad eloquently told me while taking out the trash once, stick with swimming. You'll never be a basketball or football player. It was great advice. I still swim today. But the point is, you grew up in a very, you learned a lot of work ethic. Everybody looked after each other. And the circumstance then was, I went to a high school on the Lafayette side that probably only 30% went to college. Most went into the factories and went into trade work. And it was very noble. I mean, the trades at that time were legacy trades. If your uncle or father was an electrician, you probably followed those footsteps. And we had a great life. We didn't fly to vacations and stay in hotels, but we camped and we traveled. I bet I camped in 40-some states with my parents growing up. So we had a very curious and a responsible upbringing. And then when the opportunity came to go to school, we all, some of us jumped on that, and others had great careers doing other things in the service and trades and things like that. So it was great. I was really lucky.
So what intrigued you about going into the construction major?
I would say I would define my higher ed experience as very unorganized. I went because friends said, you need to go here. And a great example, former IHM person, between my junior and senior year in high school, you bump into people throughout your life that are, I would call, kind of strategic collisions, that if you have your eyes wide open, it really helps you move you to the next thing. Between my junior and senior year, I was a swimmer. I was working as a lifeguard at the local Lafayette Country Club. The head person running the pool that summer just finished his master's. His name was Morgan Burke. And Morgan Burke grew up in the neighborhood that all of us live in today, and went to Brebeuf, went to Purdue as a swimmer, and became just finished his graduate degree, went on for a great career at Inland Steel, and then he came back and became the AD at Purdue. But literally that gentleman that summer took a bit of interest, and he said, which I'd never been told before, I was looking at small scholarships, I was going to have to pay for my own college. And he said, you're going to Purdue and you're going to be a Fiji. Well, I couldn't spell Fiji. I didn't know what that was. And so it was just, again, someone kind of grabbing you by the shoulder and leading you down a path. I had no idea what I wanted to major in, anything else. So I kind of struggled a little bit trying to find the right academic fit for me, because there really wasn't a lot of precedent. I wasn't taking over a family company. I wasn't, I didn't have a banking background. I didn't have any of that stuff. So I tried a lot of things. When I found the construction major, it was the closest thing to me that I could really relate to. I could sit in a class and say, I understand surveying, I understand what estimating is, and I'd call it an advanced trade degree in some ways. But and I also love the fact that you could pioneer in construction. There was a lot of opportunities with subcontractors, small family businesses and things, and you could create a lot. And buildings were kind of fun. I mean, I got more out of watching a concrete pour than I did a spreadsheet. So I like looking at things like we discussed when I came in this building. I'm thinking, I think we either built this or looked at this building. I know we have. So there was something tangible for me that I could relate to in that construction major. So
I like the term strategic collision. None of us are in our 20s or 30s anymore. Looking back on that now, does it ever hit you like, man, how lucky was I? Or that was just, I'm so happy that happened.
Oh, I'm telling you, and we can all do this, right? Especially if you have your awareness on high. I always call it the Forrest Gump theory. I feel like I've got on the wrong bus several times and got off at the right station. It's like, oh, met Joe, oh, met Vince, or whatever.
Yeah, right.
And then, again, if you're curious and can follow some of those good leads, there's certainly bad paths you don't want to follow down. But I think there's strategic collisions throughout your life. And everybody says, what's the big break you have? And I don't think at least in my case, it was never a big break. It was a series of small breaks, cracks in the door, that you saw that as an opening, and you kind of nurtured it and grew it. So.
And may not even realize it at the time.
Oh, you have no idea.
Yeah.
No idea. I'm just following this guy around and cleaning the filters at a pool. And later in life, I'm like, wow, what sage advice that was.
Right.
So I owe him
Last night I was having a conversation. My oldest is going to be a senior in high school, so we're at the beginning of the college search process. And on his list, high on his list, it's IU, which I don't know why he wouldn't want to go down to God's country for school, but and he's very interested in the Greek system. And obviously he knows that, my relationship with some of my pledge brothers, he knows his uncle, he knows lots of people in our community, school, church, what have you, that we're all Fijis, and he kind of, sees that we all know each other and have good relationships. So he was in Chicago this weekend for Lollapalooza, and he ends up out afterward with some guys that live in Chicago that he was connected with through one of his good friends from high school. And they're chatting. There's this kid that's, maybe going to be a sophomore or junior at Clemson, of all places, which, obviously we've heard of Clemson because of football. Outside of that, I'm like, it's in South Carolina, bud. Like, I don't know if your mom wants to let you go to South Carolina for college. Too far away for her, but this kid's a Fiji. And so Alex said, I'm interested in possibly looking at the Fiji house at IU. And he says, I know a ton of Fijis at IU. And then starts connecting him. And I said, Alex, have you ever heard the expression, don't burn a bridge? And he was like, well, yeah. I said, this is sort of that element of you just never know how important relationships, even as minor as I met you and I've talked to you for a half hour at some party at some guy's house, and where that may come back around. I said, you just got to keep developing these relationships, because down the road, you might bump into this person. They might be a hiring manager or whatever. It was just interesting when he said that. He goes, you're not going to believe who I met, and all the dots that started to connect for him.
It's unbelievable. Those networks saved me. And it's not the perfect thing for everybody. I get it. But finding a network, finding your space to do exactly what you just described, Joe, is just continue to connect the dots. And don't ever disconnect any of those dots. Mm-hmm. Don't erase any of those dots, because one, as I tell our 5 daughters, don't make anybody mad. Even if it's 3rd grade, they will remember that. And you will see them again. I don't care where you live. You will see them again, and they'll say, do you remember that time? And it's like,
karma's a bitch.
Yeah. I mean, it is. So be careful how you treat people and all that. But those relationships is 1,000% what your son just experienced is what I've been lucky enough to experience my entire life and career, without a doubt.
I think it's a consistent topic, regardless like what industry any of us are in, relationships, whether it's relationship selling or what have you. I think it applies to just about everyone, whether they think it does or not.
I love when I hear someone say, well, I have a business relationship with Vince or Todd, or I have this. I have never understood the difference between business and personal relationships. If you don't treat your business relationships personally, it'll never work. It's just transactional. And that's fine. You could do that. But our best relationships, our repeat clients, our lifelong friends are ones that you treat them personally. And that doesn't mean you have to hang out with them every minute. That doesn't mean you have to take them golfing every day, these types of things. But you truly have to understand what they're going through and why they have you there to do what you're doing, whether it's you're providing a product or a server, we're providing a service or whatever. If you truly understand that, that's the personal side of it that I don't know how you distinguish between the two.
Yeah. Well, that expression that you say, well, it's not personal, it's just business. I hate that expression. So I'm like, well, if you really believe that, then you've never had to make a business decision that negatively impacted someone on your team. You've never had to terminate someone's employment or anything like that. It is always personal.
It is
because
always
ultimately
personal.
It travels home with someone.
It does, yeah. And when you see that, then you have a different approach. That's exactly right. It reminds me of that scene in Goodfellas. Well, it's just business, right? It's just business. Well, you killed him, but But anyway,
he is now laying in a grave, and you're going to cover him up with dirt.
So we have that common connection amongst the 3 of us, obviously at different stages of being Fijis or members of Phi Gamma Delta at our respective universities. Obviously played a huge role in all of our lives. Now moving beyond college, though, you said you spent time a year in St. Louis and then 5 years in Boston.
Yeah.
What brought you back to Indy?
I was with a national company.
Yep.
Very exciting. You came out of school. And at that point, I just wanted a job. And I just thought, if you remember the scene in Big when he gets his paycheck and it's like $150. I just wanted a check, and it was so exciting. I think Susie and I had just been married, and I think we started our life with a loan, and here we were, and you had a job. She taught school, and I got this job. So I knew they were going to transfer me. They gave me an option. You can go to L.A. permanently or go to St. Louis for a year and then be transferred. And because you're 22 and 23 and different things decide, we're like, Purdue has a pretty good football team this year. I'd actually like to drive back for the games. So we picked St. Louis, which turned out to be a great thing because we got to go to Boston. We have lifelong friends from Boston. I have a daughter that lives there now, and we get out there often. But what I found out after about 5 years with this company, Vince, like most national large corporations, super for me, it was almost like an advanced degree. But I looked around, and every time I was getting a promotion, you got transferred. And then I started looking at the mainly men in construction, males that were like, man, he's moved 7 times. And nothing against Army brats, but I was born and raised in one house, and my parents dug into a community, and we said, we'll stay here in Boston or somewhere else, but I am going to dig into somewhere. So we kept narrowing our choices, and we came back to the Midwest. We just had our first child and said, all right, Chicago, Indy. And I'd met Andy Shiel through a fraternity brother at the Indianapolis 500 when we were both...
Great place to network.
Unbelievable, and had a great day together. So he and I had always been in contact together, and I actually called him and said, hey, I'm thinking about moving back to the Midwest. What do you guys got going? And they were really small, and I was working on major projects for this national contractor, and he said, I need your help. And so it again, one of those things, don't burn a bridge.
Yep.
Keep your relationships going, and it just connect, and it worked. And if I'd had a degree from Kelly School and could have read a pro forma or a balance sheet, I probably could have bought the company.
Oh, I thought you were going to say just been able to read.
Well, yeah, no, yeah. Well, let's say Andy was an IU grad, so we used to have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah.
So we were really small, but Andy had really the energy to grow it, and to me, that just sparked that entrepreneurial thing, and I could come in someplace if I was patient and worked hard and maybe make a difference.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask, one of our questions was like, when did you and Andy connect, and what did you guys know each other previously, or how did that all come about? So I'm glad you touched on that. There's an interesting story there, though. That's one of the, I guess, core pieces of this episode is you and Andy worked together for several years. Kind of share that story, if you would, in terms of how that started, where it went, and I think there's probably some lessons to be taught here in terms of what all transpired.
Yeah, that's fair. We started, and there was, I think, our project manager space was about double the size of this room. I think there was 5 of us. Andy and I they just landed a big contract at then Boehringer Mannheim, now Roche. And they had been there. Dick Shiel had been there. Working for him was Biodynamics, and so we landed out there, literally splitting a trailer together and building buildings. And after about 3 years, we were growing. He wanted to grow, so I said, I got this. He went back to the office to take over that. And Dick Shiel and Tim Sexton were starting to wind down at that point. So we constantly talked, and that was even our late 20s, early 30s, about how do we perpetuate this thing? How do we grow it? And we didn't agree on everything, ever. Well, most days we did. But we agreed on perpetuating this company and growing it. And we had different styles, but they really complemented each other really well. And so where Andy would be bold, I'd be deliberate, and back and forth. So we ham and egged, if you will, very well to grow it. Perfect timing for me. It was just so lucky. But so we grew the company. I came back in, started taking on different roles, more like operational leads and business development, things like that. So fast forward, our growth is great, steady, and we had some super opportunities. And then maybe we were referring to Andy, who has since passed away at 54, develops this terminal disease. And it was a really tough situation, of course. And I look back prior to that and then during that, and a couple of lessons is, one, business, just like life, has some huge obstacles in it. And if you don't prepare for some of those downturns and some of those both emotional, physical, whatever it may be, financials are almost the easiest ones to solve, right? It's back to our relationship we were talking about earlier, Joe. Everything's personal, and my relationship with Andy is very personal. We had a very close relationship, and so when he got this diagnosis, there was one of two ways we could go. One, we'd done a really good job of protecting the company financially. We'd also done a really good job looking back, and there wasn't really a great blueprint of sharing the management of the company, both amongst ourselves and then the other leaders who are still with us today. So we had a very collaborative style of solving problems. And with Andy having Shiel in the front door and the external face, that was a big deal, and it was a big blow. So there's a couple things that could happen then. And one is we sat down and we had these heart-to-hearts, of course, that you do with a business partner and a close personal friend. And it's like, how do you want to deal with this? If I would not blame you for any path you want to take. You want to go crawl in a cave, you want to crawl here, this is a serious diagnosis, and there was no answer. And he chose to lay it out there in front of him, which made it a lot easier for me, and just use the time he had the best way he could. And so we gave him the space to do that. He kept very involved in the company. And, it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun to watch. But it wasn't, It was different. And you don't have to split hairs, but these things are tough. And we had a process to Andy's passing as opposed to an event, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then processing an event that then you have to process later. So it gave all of us, and his bravery of sharing everything and being out front and upfront about it, allowed us to distill it as well. And a lesson I learned during that is just personally for me, is that when someone goes through some type of emotional, mental, physical crisis, you can never, and you should never try to attempt to walk in their shoes, because you're not. You're not. I don't know. We've all had loved ones, and you don't know. But you can walk right next to them, and that's the role. And I always thought of that when we worked together on all these things. So, yeah, it was a tough thing, and it's tough for a company, and you have to distill your friend, and then you have to also be the face of the company and move it forward. So you have that, turn the hat around, and we're done being buddies for now. Here's what I got to do to get this thing moving forward. So you got to make some decisions and go. But we still did them collaboratively throughout. So it worked. It's not what the script we wrote,
right?
But it's the things that happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think. And it's been how many years now since Andy's
2011.
Passed? 2011.
Unbelievable. Okay. I mean, we were, now I think of your age, as being super young. You guys may not think that, but we were in our late 40s when he got the diagnosis. Yeah. So, and it was a 6-year plan. And I mean, you looked at it and right to a T.
Right.
And so 54 years old. So that's been 13 years.
That's since 2011, though, and the plan that you guys put into place has been quite effective, I would say,
right?
At least from the outside looking in. What would you say are some of the things that you guys did that you think not only allowed you to succeed over the last 10 plus years, but that also is going to set the stage for future growth and longevity and all that?
If you're not a public company and a mid-sized company like we were, everybody has to go through some type of transition at some point, and you can't wait. It's like, when are we going to tell mom and dad they can't drive anymore? And we put these decisions off so long in business and in construction, which we're a very fragmented industry. It's made up of mom and pop, small, big, national. We're all over the place, and I've watched it firsthand in our industry, design and build, where people just won't make the decision. Well, here's the deal. If you don't make the decision at some point, someone else makes the decision for you.
Yeah.
It'll be the next generation that has no interest in this. It could be what have you. I could be unemotional about it because I didn't inherit. I wasn't a Shiel or a Sexton. I came in and it was a gift. I bought out Tim Sexton, and it was a gift to me I just wanted to be entrepreneurial and own a company that I had some control over and blah, blah, blah. So, but true to word and that's why I give Andy a ton of credit on this as well, and Brian Sullivan and Buddy Hennessy and some of us that end up leading the company and others, is we always wanted to perpetuate the company. I mean, that was always we didn't know how, but we always were going to perpetuate this company beyond our management. So if you just have that, the answer sometimes finds its way there. And we were lucky enough, we knew we were going to have to do some things. We had tried, selling some of it to minority shareholders within the company, deferred comp programs, all that kind of stuff. And we don't need to get in the weeds of all that. But we hired another fraternity brother, very, very, very strong CFO. And I would highly recommend anybody in the companies that either you get that advice or have that advice inside that can, again, unemotionally look at something and say, this model doesn't work long term. So we started the investigation. And it was right about 2010, 9, and then we took about 18 months to 24 months. We interviewed non-construction companies. We looked nationally and locally. Herff Jones, if you all remember that company, was a successful ESOP. We ended up on the ESOP model, which works for us, doesn't work for everybody. And that has then, to your point, Vince, has allowed us 11 years later. We crawl, walked, run, 30%, 31, 35. And then at the right timing, we flipped it to 100%. We did non-equity. At that time, I happened to be the largest shareholder. All the shareholders took a note. We put us behind the equity build and stepped back and did a long play. It was patient money. And if you want to do a quick exit, I would never do a process like that. It's private equity. There's a lot of, and that's not a wrong answer for people.
Yeah.
They should do how they want to, companies, some are built to move on. But it's what I can literally leave there and say ownership is already taken care of. You got to take care of that. So that transition to ESOP for us was fantastic. So now we have nearly 400 owners in our company. We have tradespeople, and growing up in a blue-collar neighborhood, pension was a word that people used. Pensions have gone away.
Right.
We have carpenters that, along with their 401k and our match and their ESOP, will leave their careers with us with 7 figures. Well, I feel really good about that. And they're living here, and they're building houses here and spend it here. It's been great for us, and we were able to create a capital management group, which is kind of our 7th division. We're investing in projects we're building. We bought a company last June to expand it. We just never were in a position to expand us through acquisition, and now we're in a place where we can put our money to work outside of the build side, which will also help us financially.
So, question for you on the ESOP aspect, not a mechanical question, but
Good.
more on the cultural aspect. What impact did you see on the culture of the company once the employment team became part of the ownership team?
I think it was crawl, walk, run again, and I think immediately, a person my age could see it, but I was looking at it from a different lens. I think it's just like when you introduce a 401k to your workforce and you bring your soon-to-be son, let's say 4 years he graduates and your daughter that I know is in college, and you say, and we've got a 401k, and it's like, well, great. Do I get a car or something like that? So they're just not wired to look out here that far. So I would say it took a little bit of time. It's a cultural thing. You've got to sell and sell and sell. But when it clicks, and Herff Jones told us this, and all these established ones said, when it clicks, that's when it takes off. And it took us probably 2 or 3 years before we got to 100%, and then 2 or 3 years after that. It was a 5 to 7 year process where people could repeat what that means to them, and it's important. It falls in the age groups. It means more to someone who's 40 and's been there for 15 years than it does probably someone who's been there 2. But it does change the culture. It's slow, but it changes the culture. It's not the next day. It's like, it takes some of that, and then pretty soon you get it while you're doing that. So yes, it's a cultural change for sure.
I would imagine that there's a pretty big difference between being vested in terms of equity and invested in terms of how can my individual impact on what I do every day help the greater good of the business.
Exactly, and that's one of I think the beauties of it. A 401k, we all can, and in our plan, we contribute, but you contribute your money into this savings plan, and then we match it or whatever. It's discretionary. In this one, it's showing up and doing your job. You're building equity every day, and I think that's it gives you one more step to why you want to come in and do something productive and be a part of it. And it does. And we have done this forever, way before we're in ESOP. We communicate a lot of things. We share financials. We share a lot with our employees, whether they get it or not. We're looking at it every day, but we share it because they need to know it. You're better. And as an ESOP owner, if you leave, that's yours. It's not ours. It's theirs. But there's an incentive to stay.
Right.
Yeah. And it's not a long vesting period, so it's good.
Yeah. I think it helps with that mentality that I go back to when we were in high school. Our mom had some frozen yogurt stores, and as a high schooler, as a high school kid, like
I do too.
Best treat ever.
16 to 18 years old, you're just like, whatever. I'm just here to clock in, clock out, whatever.
Look at the girls walk by in the mall.
That too.
But
there was a big bit.
I think speaking for me, like I had some other buddies that worked there as well, when your name is sort of on the door, even as a 16 to 18-year-old, you just kind of knew that, like, okay, this isn't, I'm not here for someone else. And have a little bit of a stake in the game, per se. I think the ESOP plays that role too, hopefully, that employees aren't just showing up to clock in, clock out. Right. And if they see, trash laying on the floor, they might think, oh, you know what? If I was at someplace else, I'd probably walk right by it, but I'm an owner.
Well, you two grew up in a household of entrepreneurs, and you could see that because you could hear it. You could hear it in the tone, and there are good days and there's bad days.
Yeah.
The responsibility, it's like being a farmer. You can't just leave for a month.
We were first-hand witness.
Good luck with those cows.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
First-hand witness to the grind.
It's unbelievable.
And you see what it takes, and kind of to your point of, although we didn't have any ownership in the frozen yogurt stores, when working there was definitely just a different expectation that we're going to step up and be responsible in every facet.
Yeah.
Or else go home to a pissed off German lady with a wooden kitchen spoon that wants to crack it over your knuckles.
May or may not.
Well, there's that.
Yeah.
may have broken a spoon or two.
And I'm sure deservedly so.
Well, mostly for him.
Yeah. It's because of hard glutes. Break the spoon.
Yeah, sure.
Well, Mike, what, based on your experiences then, if you were going to talk to the 21, 22-year-old Mike that's a Fiji at Purdue, it's getting ready to graduate, what advice would you give him today?
Cut your hair.
Okay.
No, I had hair. I did.
Did we all?
Actually, it was awesome.
At what point?
No, had a part and everything.
I mean, technically, I was born this way. I just reverted back.
Exactly. I think that stay focused. The work ethic was already there. I inherited it. I was lucky. Paper out at 9, whatever. You didn't have to be the smartest kid in the class, but you had to out-hustle everybody and stay ahead of that. So don't lose that edge. Don't take the setbacks too hard. Just make sure you just continue persistence, which we learned. I think it was an 8 that I had that lucky thing. Continue to build your friends network. Doesn't stop at school. It continues at work. It continues in business. It continues, if you're go to a church, or it continues in your community. Be involved. So stay in the game. There's no way. Several gifts our parents gave us. One was, you do not stay on the sidelines. You have to be an impact, or don't complain about it.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because that is another aspect that I admire about you. You've been very involved in this community in a lot of different ways. Touching on that real quick, and not to single anyone out, but 2 things. One, what's been the biggest reward for being so involved? And is there any particular piece of your involvement that has really, to you, made a huge impact to you personally?
That's really good. I would say that in the community, we divided it up amongst our company, and it gave me access to it, which was great, because Shiel Sexton would allow all their employees to get involved in the community, and we and offer that. And I would say the United Way has really helped me in a lot of ways. I've been involved with that at every level. Indiana Sports Corp has been fun because, like you all, I love sports. I love the Indiana sports. I love what this city of Indianapolis done. I favor swimming. I didn't miss one race in both the trials and the Olympics. Just ended yesterday, swimming part. And so building those pools were fantastic. Sports Corp was great because they would look, we got to get this Super Bowl here. We got to create something new. And first it was with Fred Glass, and we missed on that year. But because we missed, we were ready for the next one. And thank God we did, because our weather was as bad as Dallas that year.
Oh, yeah.
So Fred and Jack Swarbrick, which was ironic, they were both attorneys, and they turned up running 2 of the biggest schools in the country, ADs. They were great to learn from. And then when Mark Miles and Allison Melanchthon and them took over the next time, we were ready and created the Super Bowl Village, which had never been done in a Super Bowl, is now a part of the spec.
Okay.
And did things, and we lucked out weather-wise.
Oh,
but
yeah.
we planned on that that was not a one-year project, let's go throw up some Carney type stuff. There was a build, design, engineering, manage, process that turned out to be wildly successful beyond our dreams, but was a big lift. When we built the swimming pools in 2004 in Conseco Fieldhouse, we'd worked on that for more than 2 years to figure out how are we going to get these pools in there, what can it do to not interrupt the structure. We had a window between, and I'm going to probably get these backwards, but it doesn't matter, the last Pacers preseason game in the Circus, and we had like 2 weeks on this end and about 3 days on this end. Oof. So we had to figure out this build, that no one had ever done before. And I met local leaders. Scott Davison, who's now the CEO of One America, ran the meet. He was the CFO at that time. Rick Fuson, of course, and then it led to meeting Mel Raines and this and the latest $360 million remodel that we did to the Pacers because there was a trust there. Mm-hmm. So Rick and I co-chaired the Village for Super Bowl. We built the swimming pool and that, and you spend a lot of late nights with people. You get to know them well, and you build a lot of trust. So those things were wildly impactful for me that I just absolutely loved. So those are a few. Lucky.
Small events, Super Bowl.
Small events.
Some trial.
I will say that the swimming pool at Lucas Oil was just reading some of the write-ups about the kind of the behind the scenes of what it took, and then really what sort of mystified me was just pumping the water in for the single hydrant. I thought, how long did someone just have to sit there and watch? Still coming in.
Filter, get it in. Yeah, you just don't want it to leak, or you have to change your name and run out of town. But and the trials was built on what we did in 2004, and then the local companies, Dot Technologies, phenomenal, Spears on the other end, they went to Omaha and did it there. So we weren't involved in those. So when this came back and the city hired us just more or less just keep an eye on Lucas and do some things, we were like arm candy. It was great. These guys already had this thing nailed, so they could do it. They're absolutely the champs. It was so much fun, and
I think that's
really
the resounding answer from everyone that went, whether they were big into swimming or not. That was amazing.
Yeah,
it was so cool.
Yeah. It was. You'll look at and when I look at the. It took me for years going to a Pacer game, look at this floor and go, all right, there was a 25-meter pool there and another one here. And and now I'll look at Lucas a little bit differently, too.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. That's cool.
Well, Mike, we appreciate you coming in this morning and sharing some of your knowledge and your background and your history on not just yourself, but also all the things that you personally, as well as Shiel Sexton, have done for the city and the state of Indiana. We greatly appreciate it.
Well, that's a very nice compliment. Everything's a team sport, right? So thank you both.
Agreed.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right,
cool.
Take care.
And thank all you guys for joining us on this episode of the Industrious Podcast. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Drop some comments if you want. You have some questions for Mike on some of the projects he's worked on or Shiel Sexton has worked on in the past. Feel free to throw them in the comments and we'll pass them along. Thanks again, and don't forget, guys, be industrious.